welcome to this very special wellness masterclass. And this is with Mia Kyricos, as you all know, with a very interesting topic, love as a business strategy. And as Nancy already mentioned, we have about over 800 people that have signed up, and we usually get about a third to a half that will be on, and the rest will listen to it afterwards because we do record it. And 73 countries. So Mia, you're popular all over the world, which we already know. Before I turn it over to Nancy Davis, who is going to conduct the interview, which she does so well. And Nancy, by the way, is our Chief Creative Officer and Executive Director for both the Global Wellness Summit, which is hosting this, and the Global Wellness Institute. I always like to share something personal that is unexpected, perhaps. And in this case, it's very easy because Mia and I have known each other for, I figured it out, Mia, I think it's over 20 years. And, but the one thing I wanted to share with you that Mia and I have in common, which is a little bit unusual, is that we both have a twin sister. And her twin sister is Gina, my twin sister is Katrine, and we are very, very, very close. But the really kind of unique thing about this is that my twin sister is identical, but I didn't know we were identical twins until we were 40 years old, because we were told that we were fraternal when we were born. And at 40, we had a doctor say, it is impossible for you to be fraternal, to look this much alike at your age. Now, I have said the same thing to Mia because she told me that she and her twin sister are fraternal twins. And I say, get the DNA test done because you look too much alike. And I think you're identical. So anyway, maybe you can all encourage her to do that because I'm very, very curious. But I will just end by saying that maybe this topic of love has something to do with having a twin sister, because there is no closer confidant, no closer, sweeter relationship than an identical twin sister, and I'm sure a fraternal twin sister as well. So Mia, I am delighted that you're here. I'm going to now turn it over to Nancy, who's going to give you a more formal introduction about all of your accomplishments and talents. But I'm delighted that you're here, and I cannot wait. I have my pen ready for all the wisdom you're going to share with us. So welcome, Mia, and over to you, Nancy.
Thank you, Susie. I'm not sure there's time to list all of Mia's accomplishments, but before I get to that, I'm just going to give a couple of Zoom instructions, which I do at the beginning of all these calls. As you know, Beatrice has muted everyone, and we're going to stay that way so that we can hear Mia and all of her pearls of wisdom without all the background noise that usually comes with these calls. If you want, there are two views that I recommend you try for this call. In the top right of your Zoom window, if you choose Gallery View, you'll see a wonderful mosaic of faces from all over the world, 73 countries. And if you want to see Mia close up when she's presenting, then I recommend in the same spot, choose the speaker view. That will bring Mia more prominently to your screen. Because there are so many people on this call, and because we're all friends and colleagues, if you want to see everybody, the center right of your Zoom window, there is a blue arrow. Just click that and scroll through the many, many pages of people who are here. We encourage you to post a comment or a question for Mia in the chat window throughout the call. And you'll find the chat button, the bottom center of your Zoom window. There's a little sort of thought bubble icon. Click that. Most of you already know this and are already posting. A window will open to your right, and that's where you could post your questions. I will just caution you that right next to the chat icon is a bright green share screen icon, and I ask you to avoid that one because that results in a distraction and people accidentally sharing their screen. Mostly, I just hope you enjoy all the things that Mia is going to share, and definitely put your questions there. Susie and I will be looking. Mia Kyricos. Mia is a renowned thought leader in the wellness world. She has helped shape some of the most iconic brands in the industry, most recently as the global head of well-being for Hyatt. Mia has chaired the Wellness Communities and Lifestyle Real Estate Initiative for the Global Wellness Institute, has attended every Global Wellness Summit since its inception, and is a founding board member of both organizations. Mia is quoted in international business and trade publications, runs a highly successful consultancy and referral firm. The list of her professional accomplishments just goes on, and we will include her bio with our notes, the follow-up email. But perhaps one of the most iconic things about Mia is her steadfast devotion to love, manifest through her large and loving family, her genuine caring for others, mentoring of younger colleagues, her lifelong friendships, and her ability to find and nurture the humanity in all of us. Mia lives on the coast of Maine, where she does yoga at sunrise on the beach, spends quality time with her beloved nieces and nephews, bakes legendary blueberry pies, and always has room at her table if you happen by. Mia is that very rare combination of extraordinary business leader who is also kind, considerate, and accessible. Today, Mia is asking and answering this question. From high-performance companies to purpose-driven organizations, is love, traditionally a four-letter word in commercial environments, a business strategy worthy of serious consideration? I can think of no one better qualified to school us all in love than my dear friend, Mia Kyricos.
Okay. So Nancy, you didn't say you might make me cry before I talk about love. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Susie, for that incredible introduction. I am overwhelmed for a minute, so I'm going to breathe before now I'm going to share my screen, but I'm so grateful to be here. I can't tell you how excited I am to present this this presentation to all of you because, and hopefully I'm going to double check. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. This is about love and business, and I started this by thinking they're strategic partners in a COVID world, in a post-COVID world, but now I think it's actually for a COVID world. I gave myself the title just today as Chief Love Officer for fun, and who knows, maybe this is a future trend, Susie. But the reality is I'm very much a student of this. This is a passion project of mine, one that I've pursued for two reasons. One, because I've had several leadership assessments done and love always comes up as a quality and it's a hard thing to actualize in a business setting. So I've sort of put that to the side. But two, one of my core wellness practices when we are in trying times, and I do not recall a more trying time than the year of 2020, is that I have to go learn something new to inspire me, to give me hope. And that's exactly what love has done for me here. We've all been in quarantine. We've gone through furloughs. We've had to lay off team members, go through layoffs ourselves. It has been an extraordinary time in 2020. And I figured that learning how to bake a new pie wasn't going to cut it this time, and that I really needed to study up on love. And so I've hit the books. For a few months. I've interviewed people, I've read every article I could find, I've looked at books, and today I'm so excited to share with you what I've learned over the next 20 minutes or so. But before I do, you probably should ask, why should you care about what I think? And I know that I know many of you on the phone, but I also know that there are new faces and friends that I hope to make. So at the highest level, I will just say that of all the companies I've worked for, the different kinds of clients I've helped to advise, the causes, the organizations like the wonderful one we're involved in today, all have one thing in common. And they are dedicated to championing the business and power of this $4.5 trillion economy that, thanks to the Institute and to Nancy and Susie, we actually can refer to every day, this data. And this is the what. This is the what of what we're doing, but I will tell you that this topic of love can affect all industries, the public, the private sector, but also each of us on a personal level, on a social level. And so while this has been my what, if you will, this is going to be more about the how. You know, I love Tina Turner. She's my favorite concert that I've ever gone to. I'm probably dating myself a little bit. I also like, today's music, but she asked the most important question. And I will say the bottom line of my work and my research and my interviews over the last several weeks and months is that, as it turns out, love has a lot to do with it. And it's inspired me to share for three key reasons. One, that despite the size and power of the industry that we're involved in, we don't spend enough time in the wellness industry, but also other industries, focusing on how we work and how we treat each other. And that's where love plays, I think, a critical role. The second reason is I'm a conflicted Gen Xer. You know, I remember what it was like to start in my first job in an office, and love only played a role when HR was telling you that if you had a romantic relationship in the office, you had to immediately disclose it. And so that's what I remember love to be. I never once contemplated it in a business setting, even though I felt it here. I had to know it here. Much like wellness. And so this is something that I can now say, I feel it and know it in both places. And the third reason why I wanted to share today and jump into this topic is for hope. You know, I think that the only way we survive years like 2020 is by finding the hope that's really ahead. And this is it. This is what's given me hope and excitement for the future. It all comes down to love. But the reality is we have our work cut out for us, because as you'll see in this quote, most business leaders do have a disinclination to embrace love as a business strategy, because they're conditioned to believe that leadership means being cutthroat, aggressive, and sometimes mean. I think we've come a little further than this, but this is a mentality as someone that's worked with senior leadership teams around the globe. Quite honestly, generational factors, older people in work. We started in corporate America, and I would say multinational organizations, believing that this was required. And I think it's time that we shelve this mentality in favor of a new one. So I'm about to go through, despite all my weeks of learnings and so forth, I'm going to cover 5 key takeaways that I've learned during this work. We're going to cover 5 key takeaways. Then I'm going to give you 3 tips if you are brave enough to pursue love as a business strategy at the end. And then we'll save time for questions. I'm anticipating this will take about 15 minutes, and I'll try to speak slowly so that everyone around the globe can hear me. So lesson number 1. Here's the good news. Some companies have already made love a strategic priority, and it is paying off from a business standpoint. And I will tell you, I found many, but here are 2 that I think have really great brand equity. The first one I picked for you, dear Nancy, Subaru, and I am sure there's many Subaru owners and drivers here on the call. But many people might realize that they have that tagline of love. It's what makes a Subaru a Subaru. But I actually dug in to see, was it just marketing? And it turns out it isn't. If you research, and I spoke to some people at Subaru, they have a love promise, which is akin to their purpose. It's something that guides them when it comes to being inclusive and diverse in the workplace. It guides them in how they actually deliver their customer service. And the list goes on. So this is a company that's actually doing so. And has it paid off? Well, they have the highest ranked brand loyalty among mass market automotive brands in the world. So I would say maybe it's not all about love, because they certainly have a quality product. But they're like a cult following. People that own Subarus love them, as you see Nancy nodding emphatically. Another company is Southwest Airlines. I actually was stunned about what I learned about Southwest, and you can see the heart and actually their logo. If anyone sees, these are the wings that they wear when they're in flight. They've had a legacy of love since 1971. They took their first flight from Love Field, actually it's called Love Field in Dallas. They have love as their New York Stock Exchange ticker symbol. They have a long history of weaving love into their guest experiences. My favorite one is that the flight attendants used to pass out love bites. during the flight. Yeah, those were the snacks. They don't call them that anymore for obvious reasons, but I thought that was interesting. But what's the ROI? They're tied for first in overall satisfaction among low-cost airlines. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that it's all about love, but I do think it has a big part of it. The key here is that these brands are not only loved, they're trusted, which brings me to lesson number 2. The absence of trust in an organization makes it impossible for love to grow. Think about trust as the foundation of a house that love can be built upon. And I think this is absolutely key. And I will tell you, the best book I've ever read when it comes to trust is not a business book. It's actually called Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And I don't know if anyone has read this book, but she gives an anatomy of trust that she has an acronym called BRAVING. And you can see the words here: boundaries, reliability, accountability, and so forth. And I will tell you, we don't have time to go into her full anatomy of trust. I will just say that it's helped me to understand personal and professional relationships with which I've struggled. And think about it in a work setting. You need to set boundaries for what you can and can't do. You need to be reliable. You need to be accountable. You need to be able to hold valuable information and share it with the right people. You need to have integrity. And so all of these things are critical, with the key point being, without trust, it's hard for us to like companies or leaders, let alone love them, right? And so this is a critical recipe ingredient, you see, I would say, for love. And the good news is you can actually measure it, which brings me to lesson number 3. We already have the ability to track, to analyze, and measure the impact of love. And for every company, every entity, this will be different. It's not one size fits all, but we have examples that we can point to already. Here's some here that I took from multiple industries, but you can look at low churn rates. You're turning over your customers at a slower rate. They're staying with you longer, right? You have higher margins because you have a greater number of customers, clients. So you're realizing economies of scale. You have deeper adoption or account growth. They're not just consuming one product or service. They love you enough to actually consume many more. There's loyalty program metrics. There's influence marketing, net promoter score. So what's the likelihood that someone's going to recommend you? So all of these are just some examples. There are many more that are applicable to each business. But one of my favorites, and I would say, I think the number one overlooked measure is employee love. Think about this. When was the last time you asked your employees what they love about their job? When was the last time? When was the last time you looked at all your stakeholders? What about your board members? How they advise? What do they love about being on your advisory board? What about your community members? What do they love about having you in their backyard? Your customers, your partners, your suppliers. What do they love about that? Better yet, when was the last time you were asked what you love about your job? Think about it. Now, we all have moments where we love our work. We get into the flow and all of a sudden 3 hours have passed and it went by like this. Or there's a boss that you love so much that you would do anything to help them succeed, help him, or more likely her, achieve her business goals, right? I mean, these are things that if you feel it, we know if we felt that when we've loved our work where it's given us purpose, right? Well, imagine if you could take that, bottle it, replicate it, multiply it, because you've strategically focused on bringing love to life strategically. This is about managing to people's strengths. It's about managing to the good in your business. And I just think that that is such a key component of that. I mean, really, this comes down to managing positively, about positivity management, which is a thing. And that brings me to lesson number 4. Positivity can be serious business, and love is its greatest form. And this isn't just about lip service and providing smiles. Positivity is actually a science, much like the leadership science that we've been reading about out there. I don't know if anyone's ever read this book, but I will tell you, this book changed my life. Before Brené, I was so curious if there was something around positivity, and I will give you the punchline of this book. Basically, Barbara Fredrickson talks about a 3-to-1 ratio. You need to have 3 positive thoughts for every 1 negative thought to be able to flourish in this life. And that's really hard because with natural evolution, 80% of our thoughts with fight or flight are actually designed to be negative. So it takes work to be positive. She talks about the 9 forms of positivity, including joy, gratitude, serenity, hope. There's several forms. You have to read the book. She tests each single one of them. There's all these wonderful case studies about how positivity has paid off in business and in life. But to me, the most impactful one as I pursued this research on love is that love is the superpower of positivity. It really has the ability to encompass all other forms in one. And so to me, this was really interesting because now there's a growing body of research that actually links positivity practices, remember love being its greatest form, to business outcomes like productivity, customer satisfaction, employee retention. And Susie, I know you always like numbers, so I'm going to give you an example of one here in just a minute. But really, for some companies of late, positive leadership has truly meant the difference between failure and success. And I will tell you, I'm saving you the crib notes from weeks of study here. I'm going to tell you that positivity pays. And if love is its greatest form, then we should all be listening. I read a case study on Prudential that I thought was amazing. Prudential's an insurance company, real estate company. It manages people's wealth, phenomenal. And I mapped back positivity management practices in 2003. They actually merged with Cigna in 2003. And I will tell you, they described it as if the Boston Red Sox bought the New York Yankees, not the Yankees buying the Red Sox because I'm a Boston fan. And they said it was such a culture clash that the leadership team realized they really needed to do more. So they decided to put positivity in action. And after the training, they increased their annual growth after taking the entire executive team through how to bring positivity to life. It actually impacted their performance. How did they do that? Well, they changed their areas of focus by institutionalizing forms of positivity. Things like focusing on their assets and what they had at their disposal versus focusing on where they had gaps, talking about the wins versus the challenges. It affected how they treated people. The list goes on to different things that they had done to literally make it a management practice. And so one of these individuals who went through this executive training the first time around was named CEO of their real estate arm. He applied it to their division and turned a $70 million deficit into a $20 million profit. We don't have time for me to give you all these details. I put the source here. The point is positivity pays. So if positivity pays, and there's 9 forms of positivity, and love is its superpower, can you imagine what the business impact could be if the superpower of love was institutionalized as a positive management strategy? We're going back to school, but when I looked at this, I thought, oh my gosh, all these dots started firing in my head. And I thought, this is incredible. This is something that can really be done, which brings me to my 5th and final lesson. And I will tell you, this is one I've learned about experience over the last 30 years of really being dedicated to hospitality. And this is what I've learned, that you can care for those that you do not love, but if you love to care, the impact stands to be exponential. And I learned this in the art of service. And I think every single one of you who are on the phone, who have touched the global wellness economy, who have delivered services to people around the world to impact their health, to help them live longer, richer, more quality of lives. If you love to care, this impact stands to be exponential. And I learned this lesson for the first time when I was quite honestly, waitressing at a restaurant on the coast of Maine when I was 15 years old. And I had friends that were just trying to make money. They'd clock in for work and they'd clock out, and they were happy with what tips that they had. For me, just to make it more fun, because I genuinely enjoyed this, I loved making someone's wedding celebration exciting with a big in. I loved actually surprising them on their 25th wedding anniversary with a surprise dessert and a bottle of champagne at dinner. And I learned pretty quickly that care and love, if you love to care, can deliver ROI. I now know it's because I genuinely loved the art of service. In fact, I will tell you that I think it can lead to another kind of ROI, one that I learned recently called reciprocity on investment. That's not my phrase. I'm calling the new ROI, but reciprocity on investment is when you do what you love in the service of people. Most of them will love what you do and give that love right back to you in your business. And I learned this from Steve Farber, an author who I had the good fortune to connect with during this research, who wrote this book, Love is Just Damn Good Business, and who knew that book even existed. And he taught me about reciprocity on investment. It's my single best takeaway from his book. I do think this is the new ROI in a world that we're living in that's so tumultuous, and that really it needs to be more than just traditional Wall Street return. It's how do we care for each other in these times. So I'm nearing the end of this presentation. I just have two more things to say. Well, three as the case may be. As you consider strategically applying love in business, I'm going to give you 3 tips. And this took a lot of time to think about how to summarize this, but I'm going to make this really simple. The first is this: just like workplace wellness and well-being, lip service is not going to cut it. Love needs to be authentically part of a business strategy. And that means that you need to cultivate the soil of your organization, your community, your business, and your CEO needs to be the lead gardener. It's the only way that love is going to blossom, and it's the only way that it will actually impact your business. The second thing that you need to remember is that you can measure the impact of love. You can. I mean, we've got those measures out there already. We might call them different things, and they will vary from business to business, but you can measure it, and it's important because I had a deja vu moment that just like the impact in the business of wellness and well-being, you need to be able to draw conclusions as to how it's actually impacting your business financially and qualitatively. And the reality is, it's not a payoff that comes in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, but it will come. And then the third one I will say is that love is not for wimps. Anyone who's been married can tell you that. But it takes courage. It takes courage to be able to walk into a boardroom and have a conversation with venture capitalists. When you're in there and you have to talk about bringing love into business, it is an uphill battle, just like it was for wellness and well-being. It does take courage. But the beauty of this, I think we all know, is that this has impact well beyond the boardroom, well beyond business. In fact, on a serious note, much has happened since I researched the power of love. I mean, I can't tell you, when I look at this picture on the right, I think about the love that it took to take a knee, right? But the truth is, I'm not the only one that have talked about love. There are many more people before me, and I hope many more after me, that will be inspired by the power of love moving forward. So thank you so much for letting me share this with you. I'm grateful. I will
Mia,
stop.
that was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And no doubt your superpower, which we all have just got to see, is not only love, but presenting love, which also I think takes courage, and to stand up and do that in a business environment and make that so important. Really wonderful. And you'll read the chat later, which is just lighting up with praise for this presentation, the book recommendations, and the hope that you will share this presentation in our follow-up notes, which I'm sure you will, because it's recorded and shared anyway. What inspired you to do this work? Why did you do this work? Why did you spend this time researching love and business?
Mostly for two reasons. One, I just had a theory that it could actually pay off. I've always thought when we manage to try to fill our weaknesses, or if we try to pursue a business strategy because we're fighting a challenge, I felt like there was more to be there. I've also feel, and I will say, I'll give this credit to people like Brené Brown and others. I've sensed a shift in my career over the last 25 years of we are being urged to show up as our whole selves at work. And nothing has accelerated our whole selves than being quarantined during COVID, right? I mean, we've had to suddenly get on Zoom if we weren't familiar with doing that before. We've had to figure out how to be the business leaders that we are, homeschool children, figure out how to save our businesses, some of which might not come back, manage our own sanity, the list goes on. And if there was ever a time for love, it's now, right? And so that would be one thing. And the second thing is just most people know about my personal experiences in 2020 and my professional experiences and surviving quarantine and furlough and layoffs, and the list goes on. I needed something to pull me out of that dark hole, because I knew, based on Barbara's work with positivity, that focusing on the negative climate wasn't going to help. But finding something that could really tie together something from my heart with my head, because I need both. I need the evidence and the business metrics, and I need to feel it, is a great ground for growing love. And so I really do feel like we are being urged by the universe to treat each other with kindness and compassion, as we've heard on these calls, but also this was for me going back to school and learning something new, and I'm so grateful that I have, because this will be a pivot for me.
I was going to say, is this the next chapter in the Mia Kyricos book?
The current chapter that we're in is enjoying the summer on the seacoast of Maine, and let me tell you, it's fabulous.
That's love.
And taking a break, because as well-being leaders, we have to take time to, nurture ourselves when we feel like we need to. And so I've been doing that. But I will say that managing my advisory firm and my consulting practice, which has always been sort of alive on the side, whether that continues as its full-time role, whether I join the leadership team of another company, the reality is that love will have to have a seat at the table, and I need to trust that it can. And so that's really my thinking on that front.
So on that thought, how do you bring love to the table in an organization? What about an organization, a company that you would not characterize as already having that as part of their DNA? How do you bring that to them? How do you make that important? How do you sell this as a strategy? I know you've done numbers and you've got research, but I mean, having that conversation, bringing it to the boardroom, how do you do that?
I think you really, like any business, I will say, any company that you join, you have to understand what makes them tick and what their business model is. Quite honestly, how do they make money? And people should not feel shame about that. You have to make money to do love and put love into the world, and to foster progress in the different industries. I think it's important to understand what are the financial metrics, what are the success metrics of the organization. Are they looking at all their different stakeholders And are they asking the questions of employees? Are they asking the questions of board members and stakeholders? Are they simply starting with asking them what they love about the organization? And the flip side of that is, do they have the courage to ask what they don't love? You know, I think we all know that customer insights and research is so critical. You need to understand what the intrinsic motivators are of the people that you serve. Why are they consuming your products or services? Are you being successful in that? That's a great starting point to really understand. Loyalty programs are a great example. Why are people loyal to you? I think understanding the why of your constituents will help to understand, to better the how of how you work, is really how I look at it. And I think love is something that we have to just be comfortable to say out loud, right? I mean, it's a very strange, but everyone on the phone, I know many of you, and I know many of you have had this exact scenario with wellness 20 years ago. I know many of you have had a hard time being in a boardroom talking about how actually these alternative therapies or these programs can help colleagues flourish, or the benefits of massage actually do help cardiac patients pre and post surgery. I mean, we've already been tested to the high heavens, and we're still being tested. Love is just another version of that overall well-being story.
Well, so part of that well-being story has been about self-care, taking care of oneself. And there's so much in the popular vernacular about self-love, making sure that you love yourself. What role does that play in being able to bring that to a company as part of a mission?
Nancy Davis, if we had time to have prepped these questions, I would have put that one on the top of the list. That is an awesome question.
That came from part of the chat too.
It's a great, I will say, I'm not going to say it's impossible because I'm Miss Positivity, but I will say, if you have not experienced love in some degree, if you don't feel it, it's hard to appreciate it if you don't love yourself. And make no mistake, a lot of this work was helping me to love myself, and then drawing from love I've received from others and given. I do think authenticity matters. And so this isn't something that you can fake. I mean, you have to believe in it, and whoever leads it needs to be an authentic person that love is part of who they are. They've at least experienced it. It does start with us as individuals. I work very hard, and I will say the love of my life, James, as you all know, makes sure that I'm practicing self-love when I'm not being very nice to myself and I'm uttering things out loud. Or even in preparation for today, when I woke up and was having my cup of coffee, he came out and said, are you going for a walk, a bike ride, meditate good, because he wants to make sure that I'm taking time for myself and to love myself. And that's the secret to my success. And it has to be, you have to love yourself. You need to understand what it means to authentically love others. And then you apply it to business and to your communities.
Well, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I have to say, knowing you as I do, I know that you surround yourself with love. Mia lives in Maine, but she lives among her extended family there. And so there's tremendous, I mean, you're close to your sister geographically, your parents, your grandmother. There's a whole sort of network of love that you are in and amongst. And what would you say has been the greatest value of that in your life? How has that manifest in your life, that connection to people and family like that?
I will say that I think if anyone knows about me, I've been blessed enough to travel around the world, and a lot of times it's been by myself, as we all do, as we're pioneers trying to, as your road warriors and traveling and so forth. I will say that there have been periods of my life where I've been so consumed by the work that I have neglected to either share that or stay as well connected. And I will tell you, I can point to those times, and I was less successful during those times. When I actually schedule love, and you all can take that as you will. But for me, a part of my routine, I'll give you an example, spending a lot of time in Chicago or DC or New York or Brussels, any place where I've lived away from family. I've had to schedule, it's either on my way into work or my way out. I put the habit of, I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to call someone who just knows me as Mia. I'm going to check in with my college roommate or whatever. It's finding those sources and getting out of the head. Instead of thinking of that meeting I have in the morning or whatever, is really finding a way to connect with people. Waking up in the morning and meditating and moving in some way are keys to my fitness. But the third one are those love chats where I literally force myself to connect with someone once a day to fill my cup, because I need to be filled before I walk into the office or after. I will say, I know I'm going to annoy people, but James would walk me to work when I was walking to the office every morning that he was in town. So my cup was filled there. And on the way home, when I walked alone, I would usually call Gina, my mom, my dad, someone. And I will just tell you, it's incredibly meaningful, and something that has been probably the single thing, no matter where I've lived, is to stay connected and reach out to people that love you and love you back. It only helps your well-being and helps you to be a better business leader and community member.
And would you say too that is part of the community you can create? You have created it. I think we have it in our organization. You create that kind of community of love and connection where you work as well. I mean, that becomes a second family. We say that, it's not a cliche, it's meaningful. I mean, if you are spending a lot of time with people, you almost develop a family dynamic. It really is based on love, but people don't talk about it in that way.
It's about being human. I mean, think about this. I encourage everyone on the call to think about this. Think about how your meetings start. Are you getting in a room to solve a problem every time? Or we got to fix something, we got to achieve something, we got to meet this goal? Think about that. When was the last time when you ask, oh, hi, how are you, that you really meant it? It's not just a one-way question. When you ask how you are, how does that come back? You know, we would make it literally part of our meetings where we would check in with each other first. Let's go around the room and check in. How's everyone doing? When things felt down, and I was in the middle of, when I've been in the middle of meetings, like whiteboard sessions or planning meetings, you can just tell. We all know that time when you just feel like the energy is really low or it's just feeling insurmountable, asking people what they're grateful for in that minute. And then you go around the room and people talk about it. It's something in their life. It's a moment to connect on a human level, not a business level. Then go back to the drawing board and watch your creativity go through the roof. It's because we need to make it okay to be human at work, just like we are in life. Nobody checks the mother, the sister, the daughter, who they are at the door to walk in to say, okay, I'm ready to be Chief XO, right? That is something that we really need to fix. And I think the beauty of 2020 and times like these is we've had no choice but to do that, to check in, ask how you're doing as your internet goes down, as the dog runs around chasing the 3-year-old that's home being homeschooled. And, all of the technical problems that we've had, it's forcing us into our own humanity, and at its core could be love, should be love.
This is just the most incredible presentation and conversation, and everyone agrees who's on this call. I mean, it's giving people tremendous hope. And I think it, because in all of us, there is this capacity. And can you talk for a minute a little bit more about the science of positivity
Sure.
and the impact of that?
Sure. I will tell you, I've actually got it on my bookshelf. If I could reach it, I'd grab it. It's so worn. It looks like it's been run over by a car, peed on by the cat. This goes on. But positivity is such an important part of actually having businesses flourish. It's so often that we are focused on the glass being half full and half empty than half full. There is literal science that Barbara shares in her book about people that made a concerted effort to be more positive in work or in life, and she measures both, and literally talks about the compares and contrasts the performance in business, or if someone's trying to achieve a particular goal, someone who approached it negatively, which is what our DNA is wired that way. I mean, versus making a concerted effort to be positive. And it's extraordinary. I mean, there's countless cases. One of the best examples I can point to is one that probably people know about. Has anyone ever seen the water in the jar exercise? You go to freeze something, or you put the water in the jar, and you scream like crazy at one, and it starts to disintegrate. You give one love, and it starts to grow and flourish. There's lots of examples of plants. I've seen people do this with plants, that they made those terrariums. I never say that word right, but the glass bulbs with the plants in it. And they've literally tested this, where you put one in a room that you go in and shout it every day. You put another one in a room, and you give it all the love. And ironically, which one actually fosters? I mean, you talk about energy medicine. That's what this is. I never believed it. I've done it, and it's astonishing. So the science of positivity, what's really important to note is that for every negative thought you have, and it's hard to catch ourselves, you need to have 3 positive thoughts to basically stand the chance to stay ahead. And that takes a lot of work. And let me tell you, I am not an expert at this. I'm a student of it too. And, you know, most of my talk, ironically, is negative. I think I study things like love and positivity so that I stay in the 20%. So
that's very
I
surprising
really
to
encourage
hear.
people to read this book because there's so much research that I wouldn't do Barbara justice. But each one of them is a case study that she spent 30 years doing. And I will tell you, all of you can actually go, just Google positivity ratio. There's a free quiz online that you can take, and then you can benchmark it to see what your ratio is.
Well, we will send along a lot of links and the books, and I hope your presentation, Mia, obviously we video this. This will be on our website, available for everybody. Lots of people will watch this call in its recorded form, as we know, especially when word gets out how, if you missed it, you missed something very, very special.
Nancy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did just actually see something in the chat. I haven't been paying attention to the chat, but there's a question here that I think is a really good question, and one that I have personally experienced. Someone asked, I think it's Paula or Paula, depending on where you are in the world. You asked, how do you bring love during a very difficult work relationship?
Right.
And I will tell you, you can work for a company that you love, but if your immediate supervisor is not someone that you can find something to love about, or worse, you do not trust, that can be the make or break situation, no matter how much you love the brand or the organization you work for. I will say I have learned through my research, I have rectified relationships with which I've struggled personally and professionally. And I've realized that it's typically those that do not feel love, that have not experienced love, that feel unloved in their work or professional life, that stand to be your worst critics in your hardest relationships. So you have to dig deep to do this, but the only way you survive that is if you almost treat them as a patient, if you pull out your compassion and your empathy meter. And when that person is treating you poorly, to basically accept the fact that they're probably unloved, and go from a place of feeling angst and frustration to empathy. And it's the only way that you can actually nurture that. It's not easy and it's not foolproof, but it is something that you need to just recognize. And if you recognize that, I can't think of anything more awful, that it's much easier to be empathetic, if not sympathetic, and then get over the fact of how they're treating you, because it really has nothing to do with you.
Fantastic. I think that also applies. There was another question about how you have like a difficult conversation at work with someone that you have to at this time lay off. I mean, you had the experience of having to do that recently, Mia, and maybe you could just talk for a minute about how love and compassion figure into that kind of conversation.
Absolutely. Nothing. I think there are few times in life, but few times in work, where you can lead with love than during a layoff. And the reality is, it's astonishing to me that companies can still get this so wrong. People want to feel seen, respected, cared for till the very last moment. They want to feel those things. And you know what? They've earned it. If your job's being eliminated, nothing is more important than not the what, which is the layoff, but how you actually execute that, how you care for them to the very end, how you show their love, the support, how you show the respect. And honestly, I've heard horror stories of how this has been executed in recent months. And I've heard wonderful stories of people being cared for, not just through the transition from a company, but then again, until they get to their next place, or supporting them through their next place. And so on that token, with at least, I'm only going to speak in the US, 1 in 4 people are unemployed right now. If you look at the numbers, due to this, largely due to the situation of COVID. I know that more is true around the world. So the time for love is certainly now.
I want to just add one shameless plug when you were talking about positivity, and that is that optimism, another sort of way of looking at things. We have a lot of information. We'll send the link along in the follow-up email to Wellness Evidence, where we do show the science behind optimism, the power of optimism, and what that can do, not only personally but professionally for people in business. So absolutely. So much here. I mean, this has just been such a rich conversation. Mia, what keeps you up at night? What are you most worried about in the world? And then what are you most hopeful about?
I mean, candidly, I'm worried of the state of United States politics. Mostly because it has implications for business. It has implications for how we're seen in the world and how we show up in the world. And I am one that believes that this is one of the best countries on earth, but we have a lot to learn from other countries in the how, not just the what. So I think about that. What gives me hope is I think that we have such an opportunity, I think, and I'm going to thank COVID for this. This is why my love presentation has a piece of COVID bacteria with hearts all over it. We have actually gotten closer. We've gotten closer to each other. We've become more human. We all speak many different languages around the world, but humanity, how we treat each other, is the one common language that you don't even have to speak the same one to show that, to demonstrate that, to just be compassionate human beings. I really do feel that the opportunity we have to rethink how we work, to rethink how we show up in our communities, to rethink how we treat each other, I just think we have such an opportunity. And I will tell you, yes, practically it's going to be uncomfortable to do business and to travel and be accustomed to working the way we once did positively prior to COVID. And yes, we have this next year until a vaccine really becomes largely available. But what we have is this opportunity to rethink how we work and how we operate to do good in the world and make it okay to be human at work. And the only way you can be human at work is if love is part of the equation. And the beauty is that I really do believe this isn't about being just touchy-feely and hugging and kissing and smiling. This is about businesses being here tomorrow when we need them to be. And this is the greatest opportunity I think we have, is to simply love more. That's it.
Susie, I notice you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Well, I want to just thank you, Mia. I have never, and we've been doing a lot of these calls, I've never seen the chat so active, so positive, so reacting so positively to what you're sharing. And I'm going to preempt what I think Nancy's going to say maybe at the end, which is to invite Mia to do this talk.
Yes, absolutely.
At the summit, which is happening in Palm Beach.
Already wrote that down.
But I just wonder, I have one question for you, Mia. We've been loved, we have loved. How would you define love? Not everybody maybe has that experience like, some of us have. How would you define love? Just wondering.
Unconditional acceptance for who and what we all are. I mean, I didn't think about that beforehand, but listen, we're not perfect. We're going to screw up in business. We're going to screw up in relationships. We're going to say things we wish we didn't. We're going to, pursue strategies that don't work, and then we have to go own them, But if we love each other, if we just accept that we're human, and you do that unconditionally, I mean, that's really what it is. It's unconditionally caring for people that you work and live and, interact with. That's really what it comes down to. So it's unconditional acceptance. That's what love is, I think. And the reality is, it's not just business. It's everything that's going on in the world today. And it's about assuming positive intent. You have to assume that people really didn't intend to hurt each other. And you have to assume that you're pursuing something that you believe is good for your business. And it's, like I said, it's not going to be for wimps, and we have our work cut out for us. But if not, then I'd say when, because it's the only way we're going to turn the page on 2020 and get to 2021. So.
Mia, this has just been as remarkable as I thought it would be. You are really an inspiration. I'm going to ask Beatrice to unmute and let everybody just give you a little love in this last 30 seconds of this call.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Oh,
Thank you.
Mia, thank you.
Oh, Mia.
Thank you.
Oh, bravo, bravo.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Mia.
Thank you, Mia. From Fort Lauderdale,
So much,
Florida.
Mia. You are amazing.
Thank you, Mia.
All of you, Mia.
From Jamaica.
What I have in my notes.
Thanks, Mia.
Indeed.
Oh.